Hello and welcome to the return of From the Stretch on this February 2nd, 2026. This is episode number 1, and we are glad to be back after quite a long hiatus. And of course, I'm your host, Jason DeCanio, ready to go with the articles that pertain to the history of today. Now, normally, Groundhog's Day is today, and we found out that our furry friend saw his shadow. So that means it's going to be 6 more weeks of this gruesome cold weather. And you're probably saying to yourself, well, what does he know about cold? He lives in Florida. Well, for all those people who don't think Florida ever gets cold, well, look at the temperatures. We're in the 30s, folks. That's cold. Okay, sure. What do you expect? Are you expecting it to be minus 22? There's a difference between minus 22 and plus 5. There's a huge difference. And I've experienced minus 5 living in New York the times that I was up there. Anyways, today's articles pertain to February 2nd. And the first one we're going to be looking at today on our timeline is the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is signed. And then we will go to the National League of Baseball is found from 1848 to 1876. We'll look at that one. And then we'll swipe down to James Joyce is born. And then look at Black inventor Alfred Crail patents the first ice cream scoop in honor of Black History Month. To 1913, the Grand Central Terminal opens in New York City. Should be fun. We'll take a break from there and then go look at William Desmond Taylor, who was found murdered in 1922. To 1943, the Battle of Stalingrad ends. The last German troops in the Soviet city of Stalingrad surrendered to the Red Army. 1949, the United States rejects a proposal. Whoops, what am I doing? Back. I'm going to do that. All right, yeah, proposal from conference with Stalin. Klaus Fuchs. Yeah. Or Klaus Fuchs or Fuchs, however you want it, or Futches or Fuchs. He's arrested for passing the atomic bomb information to the Soviets. What a name. First U.S. Air Force airplane crashes in South Vietnam in 1962. Idi Amin takes power in Uganda. And WABC TV airs Willowbrook documentary exposing horrible conditions. To 1974, The Way We Were becomes Barbra Streisand's first #1 hit. Sid Vicious, not the wrestler. He was a bassist for the notorious Sex Pistols. He died of a drug overdose in New York City. Ab scam operation revealed in 1980. Man charged in California's cyberstalking case in 1999. And then we'll round out to 2014. Some 12 years ago, actor Philip Seymour Hoffman dies of another drug overdose at the age of 46. So let's start all the way back. We go to 1848, to the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, and it's signed. And we'll read up on that right now. On February 2nd, 1848, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo is signed, ending the Mexican-American War in favor of the United States. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo added an additional 525,000 square miles to United States territory, including the area that would become the states of Texas, California, Nevada, Utah, New Mexico, and Arizona, as well as parts of Colorado and Wyoming. Controversy during and after the war pitted President James K. Polk in a political war against two future presidents, Zachary Taylor and Abraham Lincoln. Polk was a Democrat. He ignited the Mexican-American War when he sent his commanding general of the army, Zachary Taylor, and his troops to claim territory along the Rio Grande River between the U.S. and Mexico. Polk insisted Mexico had invaded the U.S. when an earlier skirmish between American and Mexican troops erupted over the ill-defined territorial boundaries of Texas. Polk's action was immediately denounced by Abraham Lincoln, then a leading Whig member of Congress, who described the resulting war as unconstitutional, unnecessary, and expensive. And while Taylor performed his military duty in Texas, Polk wrestled with congressional opposition led by Lincoln in Washington. Polk was a firm believer in America's manifest destiny of increased U.S. territorial expansion in order to bring democracy and Protestant Christianity to a backward region. Lincoln and his cohorts protested not so much expansionism itself, but Polk's justification of the war. And although the war ended favorably for the U.S., Lincoln continued to attack Polk after the signing of the treaty for his lack of an exit strategy that clearly defined citizenship and property rights for former Mexican citizens. Lincoln called the president a bewildered, confounded, and miserably perplexed man. Although Polk's war was successful, he lost public support after 2 bloody years of fighting, during which the U.S. lost 1,700 men in combat and spent a whopping $100 million. Meanwhile, Taylor earned national popularity for his heroic actions during the war, for the camaraderie he shared with even his lowliest subordinates. When the war ended, Taylor decided to run for the presidency, and one of his political mentors happened to be Abraham Lincoln, who wrote a note to Taylor after the war ended, advising him of what he ought to say regarding the Mexican-American War and the question of slavery in any newly won territories. Lincoln suggested that Taylor should declare, "We shall probably be under a sort of necessity of taking some territory, but it is my desire that we shall not acquire any extending so far south as to enlarge and aggravate the distracting question of slavery." Polk chose not to run again for the presidency, and Taylor barely won the popular vote in a race that included former President Martin Van Buren and Democratic nominee Lewis Cass. Van Buren, the Free Soil Party candidate and former Democrat, acted as a spoiler, siphoning off Democratic votes that would likely have gone to Cass. Unfortunately for Lincoln, Taylor and his immediate successors failed to address the issue of slavery during their terms, leaving the question to Lincoln to solve over a bloody civil war a decade later. Ooh. And there you have it, friends, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. All right, let's get back to the next thing on the timeline and go to the National League of Baseball is founded. So I'm going to pull up that article next to 1876. Here we are. All right, let's take a look at that one. Put you up there and get you ready to go with the National League of Baseball, founded in 1876. I'll read that up to you. So on this date, the National League of Professional Baseball Clubs, which comes to be more commonly known as the NL, National League, the American League AL, was established in 1901, and in 1903, the first World Series was held. The first official game of baseball in the United States took place in June of 1846 in Hoboken, New Jersey. In 1869, the Cincinnati Red Stockings became America's first professional baseball club. To 1871, the National Association of Professional Baseball Players was established as the sport's first major league. 5 years later, in 1876, Chicago businessman William Hobart formed the National League of Professional Baseball Clubs to replace the National Association, which he believed was mismanaged and corrupt. The National League had 8 original members: the Boston Red Stockings, now the Atlanta Braves; Chicago White Stockings, the Cubs; Cincinnati Red Stockings, Hartford Dark Blues, Louisville Grays, Mutual of New York, the Philadelphia Athletics, and the St. Louis Brown Stockings. To 1901, the National League's rival, the American League of Professional Baseball Clubs, was founded, and in 1903, the best team from each league began competing against each other in the World Series. Various teams switched in and out of the National League over the years, but it remained an 8-team league for many decades until 1962, when the New York Mets and Houston Colt 45s, later renamed the Houston Astros, joined the league. In 69, two more teams were added, the Padres and the Expos, now the Washington Nationals. And also that year, the league was split into an East and West division of 6 teams. The Colorado Rockies and Florida Marlins became part of the National League in 1993, followed by the Arizona Diamondbacks in 1998. In 94, the league was reorganized to include a Central Division along with the East and West groups. In 1997, Major League Baseball introduced interleague play, in which NL team played a series of regular season games against AL teams of the same division. In 2002, the rules were changed to allow AL NL teams from non-corresponding divisions to compete against each other. And that's the story of the National League when it was found. Nice going. I like that. Little team effort, as they say. Next, James Joyce is born. And 1882, we will take you. With that, we go now to James Joyce. Where are you, James Joyce? Let's see. Yes, here we are. Okay. Now, James Joyce, novelist. He is a novelist, of course. He was born on this day in Dublin, Ireland, the eldest of 10 children. His father, a cheerful ne'er-do-well, will eventually go bankrupt. And Joyce attended Catholic school and the University of College in Dublin. A brilliant scholar, he learned Dano-Norwegian in order to read the plays of Henrik Ibsen in the original. In college, he began a lifetime of literary rebellion, self-publishing an essay rejected by the school's literary magazine advisor. And after graduation, he moved to Paris, and he planned to become a doctor to support himself while writing, but soon gave up his medical studies. He returned to Dublin to visit his mother's deathbed and remained to teach school and work odd jobs. Then on June 16th of 1904, he met Nora Barnacle, a lively, uneducated woman with whom he fell in love, and he convinced Nora to return to Europe with him. The couple settled in Trieste, where they had 2 children, and then in Zurich. Joyce struggled with serious eye problems, undergoing 25 operations for various troubles between 1917 and 1930. But in 1914, he published The Dubliners. The following year, his novel Portrait of the Artist as a Young Man brought him fame and won him several wealthy patrons, including Edith Rockefeller. In 1918, the American journal Little Review began to serialize Ulysses and Joyce's revolutionary stream of consciousness novel. However, the U.S. Post Office stopped the publication's distribution in December of that year on the grounds that the novel was obscene. Sylvia Beach, who was owner of the bookstore Shakespeare and Company in Paris, published the novel herself in 1922, but it was banned in the United Kingdom and in the United States until 1933. Next up in the timeline, to 1897, as the black inventor Alfred Crail patents the first ice cream scoop. Oh boy. Yum, 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 yum. So let's take a look at that. And where are you? Okay. Nope. Aha. Here we go. All right. To 1897 we go, folks. And black inventor and businessman Alfred Crail, or Crawl, or Crawley, however you want to pronounce it, he patents the first ice cream scoop. His popular creation is part of a surge in patents by black inventors after the end of the Civil War. And while working as a porter at the Markel Brothers drugstore in Pittsburgh, well, Alfred noticed his fellow employees struggling to scoop ice cream cones for customers. He decided to design a contraption to scoop ice cream easily with one hand. His invention, which he called the ice cream mold and disher, received a federal patent on this date, February 2nd of 1897. And according to his patent application, the disher will be extremely simple in its construction, strong, durable, effectual in its operation, and comparatively inexpensive to manufacture. The Pittsburgh Press reported that Crail's ice cream disher could scoop 40 to 50 dishes of ice cream in a minute, while avoiding the soiling of the hands. Crail's invention spread rapidly, helping to satisfy the nation's craving for ice cream. Alfred Crail was born in Cambridge, Virginia in 1866, shortly after the end of the Civil War. And as a boy, he learned the carpentry trade from his father. He moved to Washington, D.C. as a young man to enroll in the Wayland Theological Seminary, an institution founded to educate the free black community after the Civil War. Eventually, Crail moved to Pittsburgh, where he worked as a porter at the St. Charles Hotel and Markel Brothers drugstore. And he also served as an assistant manager of the city's Afro-American Financial Accumulating Merchandise and Business Association. He died in a car accident in 1920 at the age of 54, and he was the first black man in the city of Pittsburgh to receive his own patent. He was part of the post-war wave of black patentees, which peaked in 1899. The 14th Amendment, ratified in 1868, ensured that all black Americans had equal citizenship rights. Citizenship is required to obtain a patent. Other notable black inventors of this period include Lewis Latimer, inventor of the carbon light bulb filament, Granville Woods, who invented the railroad telegraph, and Madam C.J. Walker. Madame, actually. She was the creator of hair care products for black women. Crail himself was included in the first list of black inventors created by patent examiner Henry E. Baker, eventually published as The Colored Inventor, a record 50 years in 1913. Beautiful job. Nice. And finally, before we go to break, we're now going to look at the Grand City, or the Grand Central Terminal that opens in New York City. This goes to 1913 and the start of the 19th century. So let's take a look at that real quick before we go to break. And no. I know you're somewhere here. Where are you? There we are. Okay. Let's take a look at the Grand Central Terminal that opens in New York City. We're quite familiar with it. If you've never been to New York, this is one of the places you might want to stop by. The 1913, New York City's Grand Central Terminal opens for the first time. And the transportation hub as we know it today began construction in 1903. But before that, 89 East 42nd was home to an older steam train station built in 1879. Even though the station had been updated to deal with an increased volume of commuters coming from suburbs outside the city, a collision between outdated steam trains in 1902 killed 15 people and made it clear that a more substantial renovation was needed. Well, that same year, engineer William Wilgus and railroad tycoon Cornelius Vanderbilt began planning the landmark that Grand Central is today. And they proposed a station with new electric trains that would not emit exhaust fumes and could, for the first time, operate underground. Planning officials also changed the station's name, technically a station because trains no longer went south of Grand Central Station. The hub was renamed Grand Central Terminal, and while these renovations and improvements had practical value, the more significant impact that both Wilgus and Vanderbilt hoped to create was cultural. Grand Central was designed to usher New York into the dynamic 20th century. And as the world around it grew increasingly interconnected, Vanderbilt wanted Grand Central to overtake its rival Penn Station as the palatial gateway to the heart of a rapidly growing country. Well, that ambition was manifested in the form of a towering white marble facade and a ceiling mural depicting God's view of the sky. After almost 10 years of construction and more than $4 billion in today's money, New York's architectural marvel opened to the world. And despite initial success, Grand Central eventually fell into severe disrepair due to an increase in highway use and gradual neglect. Even the ceiling blackened due to cigarette smoke. And as early as 1945, there were calls to tear down the building. However, the destruction of the original Penn Station between 63 and 66 sparked a movement to preserve architecturally significant buildings in New York, including Grand Central. Several high-profile New Yorkers, including former First Lady Jackie Kennedy Onassis and architect Philip Johnson, formed the committee to save Grand Central. The committee fought to preserve Grand Central's status as a landmark building, ensuring it could never be torn down. A $100 million restoration beginning in 1980 reestablished Grand Central as a bustling monument to the power and grandeur of New York City. And there you have it. That so far is a look at a quarter of our timeline here on February 2nd. We'll be back with more great history stories when From the Stretch continues right after this.
There are chances worth taking and some that are not. If a chance is worth taking, it's worth my best shot. So this time I'll play it safeguard. This time I'll play it safeguard.
The antibacterial lather in Safeguard gives you more deodorant protection than you may need from your soap. But a little insurance never hurts.
This time I'll play it safeguard.
The biggest play of the game coming up.
Watch it, number 5. Wide
Third
enough for me.
has been beat down.
I want to see the whole line.
It's a whole new ball game.
And if you're still watching black and white TV, RCA can make it a whole new ball game with XL100. 100% solid state AccuColor TV. Over 40 models made with circuitry designed for extended life. Each chassis tube is replaced by tough, reliable solid state devices. Color TV made to last. XL100 from RCA.
All beef patty, pickles, sauce, lettuce, cheese, and the pickles, no.
Pickles, cheese, oh.
Lettuce and onion, sesame, all seed bun.
I think they're describing a big...
2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
Say that again.
2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, onions, pickles, onions on a... McDonald's Big Mac, the big sandwich with the great big taste that everybody's talking about.
Sesame seed bun, and we forgot the onions.
Yes, it did. Yes, it did say onion.
Sure?
It said onion.
All right.
2 all beef patty, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun.
McDonald's Big Mac, the great big sandwich with a great big taste.
Special sauce, lettuce,
Pickles, cheese, hey, that's it.
Big Mac.
You deserve a break today at McDonald's.
Where your dollar gets a break every day.
Far out.
Where is he, Martha?
Still no sign of him.
It's my fault. Our son wanted to drive our new Datsun 210. I said, go ahead, the tank's full. That was 4 days ago.
The Datsun 210 gets phenomenal mileage, and it's only one of 12 new Datsun's estimated 30 mpg or better.
Hi, Bob. He's home.
Hope that Datsun runs out of gas soon. We're not getting any younger.
A long way.
I was very skeptical before I tried it. I just didn't think it could work.
So what changed your mind?
Sure natural. Sure natural.
Watch. No other Thin Maxi has super fibers throughout the pad. No other Thin Maxi gives you a protection system like Sure and Natural.
I don't know what they did with the fibers, but I think it's a major advancement. Super fibers are fantastic.
Protection this sure can only be Sure and Natural. Now Sure and Natural introduces Tiny Totes for toting and tossing.
All right, welcome back to From the Stretch. Hope you enjoyed the first quarter of the new show here, where, like we said, we're delving into the historical timeline of February 2nd, 2026, today's date. And we'll be here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with a new look at some fantastic articles pertaining to the date of the day. Now, as we go further into the timeline, let's take a look at a sad part where William Desmond Taylor is found murdered in 1922. Yeah. Well, police discovered the body of film director William Desmond Taylor in his Los Angeles bungalow. Lieutenant Tom Ziegler responded to a call about a natural death at the Alvarado Street home of Taylor. When he arrived, they found actors, actresses, and studio executives rummaging through the director's belongings. He also found Taylor lying on the living room floor with a bullet in his back, not exactly suggesting a natural death. The murder of Taylor, who was 49 years of age, became a nationwide scandal and proof to the nation's moralist of Hollywood's depravity. Wow, depravity. There we go, depravity. Sometimes these words can get you sometimes. Two of the actresses linked to Taylor got caught up in the scandal and saw their film careers flounder following the murder. Comedian Mabel Normand had been linked romantically with Taylor, but was sent to a sanitarium to recover from tuberculosis and later died. And while she was away, Mary Miles Minter, a teenager, became a star in Taylor's silent films and fell in love with him. Charlotte Shelby, Minter's mother, disapproved of the budding relationship. And after his murder, a love note to Taylor from Minter was found in his home, along with her nightgown in the bedroom. Other damning facts came to life. Minter had once tried to shoot herself with the same type of gun used in Taylor's murder. Furthermore, Shelby had previously threatened the life of another director who had made a pass at her daughter. And to top it off, Shelby's alibi witness received suspiciously large sums of money after the murder. Still, no one was ever prosecuted for Taylor's death, and the case remains officially unsolved. Many years later, in Minter's unpublished autobiography, she admitted that she and her mother were at Taylor's bungalow on the night of the killing. Famous director King Vidor told People that Minter had ambiguously admitted that her mother had killed Taylor after finding her daughter at Taylor's home. Wow. Whew. What a story of dramatic proportions. Okay, let's move on to the next in the timeline as we go to 1943 and the Battle of Stalingrad ends. We'll pull up that story right now. Here we are. Pull it over here so I can read it to you. And this is from 1943. The last German troops in the Soviet city of Stalingrad surrendered to the Red Army, ending one of the pivotal battles of World War II. Now, on June 22nd of 1941, despite the terms of the Nazi-Soviet Pact of 1939, Nazi Germany launched a massive invasion against the USSR. Aided by its greatly superior air force, the German army raced across the Russian plains, inflicting terrible casualties on the Red Army and the Soviet population. With the assistance of troops from their Axis allies, the Germans conquered vast territory, and by mid-October, the great Russian cities of Leningrad and Moscow were under siege. However, the Soviets held on, and the coming of winter forced a pause to the German offensive. For the 1942 summer offensive, Adolf Hitler ordered the Sixth Army under General Friedrich von Paulus to take Stalingrad in the south, an industrial center and obstacle to Nazi control of the precious Caucasian oil wells. In August, the German Sixth Army made advances across the Volga River, while the German Fourth Air Fleet reduced Stalingrad to a burning rubble, killing over 40,000 civilians. In early September, General Paulus ordered the first offensives to Stalingrad, estimating that it would take his army about 10 days to capture the city. Thus began one of the most horrific battles of World War II, and arguably the most important because it was the turning point in the war between Germany and the USSR. In their attempt to take Stalingrad, the German Sixth Army faced a bitter Red Army under General Vasily Zhukov, employing the ruined city to take their advantage, transforming destroyed buildings and rubble into natural defensive fortifications. In a method of fighting, the Germans began to call the Rattenkrieg, or Rats War. The opposing forces broke into squads, 8 or 10 strong, and fought each other for every house and yard of territory. The battle saw rapid advances in street fighting technology, such as a German machine gun that shot around corners and a light Russian plane that glided silently over German positions at night, dropping lethal bombs without warning. However, both sides lacked necessary food, water, or medical supplies, and tens of thousands perished every week. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin was determined to liberate the city named after him, and in November he ordered massive reinforcements to the area. On November 19th, General Zhukov launched a great Soviet counteroffensive. German command underestimated the scale of the counterattack, and the Sixth Army was quickly overwhelmed by the offensive, which involved 500,000 Soviet troops, 900 tanks, and 1,400 aircraft. Within 3 days, the entire German force of more than 200,000 men was encircled. Italian and Romanian troops at Stalingrad surrendered, but the Germans hung on, receiving limited supplies by air and waiting for reinforcements. Hitler ordered von Paulus to remain in place and promoted him to field marshal, as no Nazi field marshal had ever surrendered. Starvation and the bitter Russian winter took as many lives as the merciless Soviet troops, and on January 21st of 1943, the last of the airports held by the Germans fell to the Soviets, completely cutting the Germans off from supplies. To January 31st, von Paulus surrendered German forces in the southern sector, and on February 2nd, the remaining German troops surrendered. Only 90,000 German soldiers were still alive, and of these, only 5,000 troops would survive the Soviet prisoner of war camps and make it back to Germany. The Battle of Stalingrad turned the tide in the war between Germany and the Soviet Union. General Zhukov, who had played such an important role in the victory, later led the Soviet drive on Berlin. And on May 1st of 1945, he personally accepted the German surrender of Berlin. Von Paulus, meanwhile, agitated against Adolf Hitler among the German prisoners of war in the Soviet Union, and in 1946 provided testimony at the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg. After his release by the Soviets in 1953, he settled in East Germany. Wow. What a story. My goodness. All right, let's go now on the next timeline to 1949 as the United States rejects proposal for conference with Stalin. All right. We're getting to the heart of this World War II phenomenon here. So let's take a look at the United States rejection. Let's see, where are we? Yeah, here we are. Okay. So in response to Soviet leader Joseph Stalin's proposal that President Harry S. Truman travel to Russia for a conference, Secretary of State Dean Acheson brusquely rejects the idea as a political maneuver. And this rather curious exchange was further evidence of the diplomatic sparring between the United States and the Soviet Union that was so characteristic of the early years of the Cold War. Stalin broached the idea of Truman traveling to the Soviet Union, or perhaps to Poland or Czechoslovakia, during a statement in which he indicated that his health prohibited him from coming to the United States to meet his American counterpart. Stalin's agenda for such a meeting was sketchy, beyond a general call for a declaration by a nation or by each nation that it would not resort to war in dealing with the other. Secretary Acheson stated that he found the idea puzzling, arguing that treaty commitments and adherence to the United Nations Charter already excluded war between the two powers. Furthermore, without a more concrete agenda, Acheson was reluctant to commit the United States to any one-on-one negotiations with the Soviet Union. In any case, the secretary concluded President Truman was not willing to go halfway around the world to meet with the Soviet leader. Acheson also indicated his disappointment that any nation would play international politics with an issue as important as world peace. Stalin's vague proposal and Acheson's blistering response were typical of the constant war of words that took place between the Soviet Union and the United States during the late 1940s and all during the 50s. The verbal sparring illustrated the lack of trust on both sides and the failure to locate any foundation for diplomatic negotiations. Although relations between the two nations warmed silently during the 60s and 70s, the war of rhetoric continued unabated. Ooh, what a follow-up. To 1950, to our friend Klaus Fuchs. What a name. Well, he was arrested for passing bomb information to the Soviets. Ooh, boy. Well, let's see what he has to say about this. All right. Pull that off and put up this one. Now to our friend Klaus. Well, he was a German-born British scientist who helped develop the atomic bomb. He was arrested in Great Britain for passing top-secret information about the bomb to the Soviet Union. The arrest of Fuchs led authorities to several other individuals involved in a spy ring, culminating with the arrest of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg and their subsequent execution. Well, Klaus and his family fled Germany in 1933 to avoid Nazi persecution and came to Great Britain, where Klaus earned his doctorate in physics. During World War II, British authorities were aware of the leftist leanings of both Fuchs and his father. However, Fuchs was eventually invited to participate in the British program to develop an atomic bomb, the project named Tube Alloys, because of his expertise. But at some point after the project began, Soviet agents contacted Fuchs, and he began to pass information about British progress to them. Late in 1943, Fuchs was among a group of British scientists brought to America to work on the Manhattan Project, the U.S. program to develop an atomic bomb. Fuchs continued his clandestine meetings with Soviet agents, and when the war ended, Fuchs returned to Great Britain and continued his work on the British atomic bomb project. But his arrest in 1950 came after a routine security check of Fuchs's father, who had moved to communist East Germany in 1949. And while the check was underway, British authorities received information from the American Federal Bureau of Investigation that decoded Soviet messages in their possession, indicating Fuchs was a Russian spy. Then on February 3rd, officers from Scotland Yard arrested Fuchs and charged him with violating the Official Secrets Act. Well, Fuchs eventually admitted his role and was sentenced to 14 years in prison. His sentence was later reduced, and he was released in 1959 and spent his remaining years living with his father in East Germany. Fuchs's capture set off a chain of arrests. Harry Gold, whom Fuchs implicated as the middleman between himself and Soviet agents, was arrested in the United States. Gold, thereupon, informed on David Greenglass, one of Fuchs's co-workers on the Manhattan Project, and after his apprehension, Greenglass implicated his sister and her husband, Ethel and Julius Rosenberg. They were arrested in New York in July of 1950, found guilty of conspiracy to commit espionage, and executed at Sing Sing prison in June of 1953. Wow. Whew. What a story. All right. And finally, the first U.S. Air Force plane crashes in South Vietnam to 1962 before we head off to the break. Let's pull up the article for this one. Okay, we're getting close. Here we are. All right. So the first U.S. Air Force plane is lost in South Vietnam. The C-123 aircraft crashed while spraying defoliant on a Viet Cong ambush site. The aircraft was part of Operation Ranch Hand, a technological area denial technique designed to expose the roads and trails used by the Viet Cong. U.S. personnel dumped an estimated 19 million gallons of defoliating herbicides, over 10 to 20% of Vietnam and parts of Laos, from 1962 to 71. Agent Orange, so named for the color of its metal containers, was the most frequently used. The operation succeeded in killing vegetation, but not in stopping the Viet Cong. The use of these agents was controversial, both during and after the war, because of questions about long-term ecological impacts and the effect on humans who handled or were sprayed by the chemicals. Beginning in the late 70s, Vietnam veterans began to cite the herbicides, especially Agent Orange, as the cause of health problems ranging from skin rashes to cancer and birth defects in their children. Similar problems, including an abnormally high incidence of miscarriages and congenital malformations, have been reported among the Vietnamese people who lived in the areas where the defoliant agents were used. All right, that takes us to our second break, and when we come back, we'll look at our continuing timeline, where we will be going to 1971 to the 1980 region with 4 more great articles. We'll be back with a third part of From the Stretch right after this.
At $63.95, you could like the all-new 1986 Mazda B2000 SE5 for its price alone. Or for its radial, spoker wheels, 40 stripes and mirrors, step bumper, and double wall bed, all standard. And of course, there's the $63.95 price, plus the surprisingly roomy, quiet interior with a 5-speed. And that $63.95 price means you can now experience a sporty truck, priced close to Toyota's and Nissan's base trucks. Mazda SE5.
Joanna.
Charles.
Theirs was a love affair. A love of butter stopped short by cholesterol.
I've dreamt of giving you this.
I can't believe it's not butter.
I Can't Believe It's Not Butter is still the only spread flavored with real sweet cream buttermilk for a fresh butter taste, but without the cholesterol to spoil the romance.
I never thought I'd be swept off my feet again.
I Can't Believe It's Not Butter, now also in sweet unsalted sticks.
For viewing pleasure, it's a mini skirt. But for driving pleasure, it's Firestone's new mini sport tire for import cars. The tire that's styled for foreign cars, but engineered for American highways. Get the comer on performance. Firestone Mini Sport. Whether your bag is the country lane or the open road, you're ahead with Firestone. Available in sizes to fit almost all foreign cars. Buy the Mini Sport on easy terms and at mini prices, now at most Firestone dealers and stores.
Dick Tracy, Wethead. Dick Tracy, the dry look. Clark Kent, Wethead. Clark Kent, the dry look. Shazam, Wethead. Shazam, the dry look.
The dry look makes a good guy look even better. And only Gillette has the adjustable valve to spray as light and dry as you like. So come on, hero. Get rid of that wet look. Get the dry look from Gillette. Aerosol, and now a liquid too.
The secret of this mysterious drop of oil of Olay is that it's similar to the natural fluids your skin had so much of when it was younger. As your skin ages, it loses those vital fluids, disturbing nature's delicate balance. Oil of Olay penetrates quickly to revive the radiant look your skin had when it was younger. Discover the secret of Oil of Olay. It can help you look younger too.
Mom! Look what Aunt Marge is doing! Marjorie, the house smells like fish. Now it smells like fish and roses.
We don't use that air freshener. We use Lysol disinfectant spray. It kills germs on surfaces, and it cleans odors out of the air. Ordinary air fresheners don't do all that. Smells clean.
Lysol spray actually cleans the air.
At $63.95, you could like the all-new 1986 Mazda B2000 SE5 for its price alone. Or for its radial, spoker wheels, 40 stripes and mirrors, step bumper, and double wall bed, all standard. And of course, there's the $63.95 price, plus the surprisingly roomy, quiet interior with a 5-speed. And that $63.95 price means you can now experience a sporty truck, priced close to Toyota's and Nissan's base trucks. Mazda SE5.
Joanna.
Charles.
Theirs was a love affair. A love of butter stopped short by cholesterol.
I've dreamt of giving you this.
I can't believe it's not butter.
I Can't Believe It's Not Butter is still the only spread flavored with real sweet cream buttermilk for a fresh butter taste, but without the cholesterol to spoil the romance.
I never thought I'd be swept off my feet again.
I Can't Believe It's Not Butter, now also in sweet unsalted sticks.
For viewing pleasure, it's a miniskirt. But for driving pleasure, it's Firestone's new mini sport tire for import cars. The tire that's styled for foreign cars, but engineered for American highways. Get the comer on performance. Firestone Mini Sport. Whether your bag is the country lane or the open road, you're ahead with Firestone. Available in sizes to fit almost all foreign cars. Buy the Mini Sport on easy terms and at mini prices now at most Firestone dealers and stores.
Dick Tracy, Wethead. Dick Tracy, the Dry Look. Clark Kent, Wethead. Clark Kent, the Dry Look. Shazam! Wethead. Shazam! The Dry Look.
The Dry Look makes a good guy look even better. And only Gillette has the adjustable valve to spray as light and dry as you like. So come on, hero. Get rid of that wet look. Get the Dry Look from Gillette. Aerosol, and now a liquid too.
The secret of this mysterious drop of oil of Olay is that it's similar to the natural fluids your skin had so much of when it was younger. As your skin ages, it loses those vital fluids, disturbing nature's delicate balance. Oil of Olay penetrates quickly to revive the radiant look your skin had when it was younger. Discover the secret of Oil of Olay. It can help you look younger too.
Mom, look what Aunt Marge is doing.
Marjorie, the house smells like fish.
Charlotte smells like fish and roses.
We don't use that air freshener. We use Lysol disinfectant spray. It kills germs on surfaces, and it cleans odors out of the air. Ordinary air fresheners don't do all that. Smells clean.
Lysol spray actually cleans the air.
Okay, welcome back to From the Stretch. Every once in a while, we'll have a disappearing act where you'll just see the blank screen. That means my computer crashed. So if you see that happening, bear with us as we get back online, and we'll replay the commercials. Usually it's the commercials that usually crash the computers at this particular moment. Can't be helped, but we're glad that you still stuck around here. So be patient with us as we get these articles in and these recordings at the permissible time. Okay? Next up on the list here is Idi Amin takes power in Uganda. This is from 1971. So, 1 week after toppling the regime of Ugandan leader Milton Obote, Major General Idi Amin declares himself president of Uganda and chief of the armed forces. Now, he's head of the Uganda Army and Air Force since 1966, and he seized power while Obote was out of the country. Ruling directly, Amin soon revealed himself as an extreme nationalist and tyrant. In 1972, he launched a genocidal program to purge Uganda of its Lango and Ocholi ethnic groups. Later that year, he ordered all Asians to leave the country, and some 60,000 Indians and Pakistanis fled, thrusting Uganda into economic collapse. A Muslim, he reversed Uganda's friendly relations with Israel and sought closer ties with Libya and the Palestinians. In 1976, he made himself president for life and stepped up his suppression of various ethnic groups and political opponents in the military and elsewhere. In 1978, he invaded Tanzania in an attempt to annex the Kagera region and divert attention from Uganda's internal problems. To 79, Tanzania launched a successful counteroffensive with the assistance of the Uganda National Liberation Front, a coalition of various armed Ugandan exiles. Amin and his government fled the country, and Obote returned from exile to reassume the Ugandan presidency. Amin received asylum from Saudi Arabia, and he is believed to have been responsible for the murder of as many as 300,000 Ugandans, though he never stood trial for his crimes. Amin died on August 16th of 2003 in Saudi Arabia. Wow. Oh, man. Did he really do a number on those people? Suffice it to say. Now, WABC TV airs Willowbrook documentary exposing horrible conditions. Let's take a look at this article here. And get that up on the board. I think it's right. Here we go. All right, pull that up, and let's take a look at the year of 1972 with the documentary that was on Channel 7. And this was also by the then young investigative reporter Geraldo Rivera. You all know Geraldo today. Reviewing intense overcrowding, dangerous conditions, and frequent abuse of patients at Willowbrook State School facility on Staten Island, housing roughly 5,000 children and adults with developmental disabilities. And when New York Senator Robert F. Kennedy visited Willowbrook in 1965, he compared it to a snake pit, with residents living in filth and dirt, their clothing in rags, in rooms less comfortable and cheerful than the cages in which we put animals in a zoo. The state of New York developed a 5-year improvement plan, but conditions quickly deteriorated by the early 70s. Staten Island Advance series published an investigative series on Willowbrook in 1971, and according to a February 72 New York Times article, Dr. Michael Wilkins, an ousted Willowbrook staff member and whistleblower, also began granting facility access to local TV channels and eventually Rivera. In his ABC story titled Willowbrook, The Last Great Disgrace, Geraldo Rivera filmed patients in uncontrolled conditions at the state-run institution. The documentary drew widespread attention, appalling viewers and sparking a national outcry. There was roughly one attendant for every 50 children, many of whom sat unclothed in the ward throughout the day. As the Times recounted, the only sound picked up by Rivera's technicians was something of an eerie communal wail. Rivera said in his voiceover narration, "This is what it looked like. This is what it sounded like. But how can I tell you about the way it smelled? It smelled of filth, it smelled of disease, and it smelled of death." Parents of Willowbrook residents filed a class action lawsuit in the U.S. District Court of Eastern District of New York for it on March 17th of 1972, alleging the institution violated the constitutional rights of its residents. They pointed to issues ranging from the indefinite confinement of residents to overcrowding to inadequate clothing and meals. The case went to trial in October of 74 and was settled in April of 75, prompting U.S. District Court Judge Orrin G. Judd to issue the Willowbrook consent judgment. It established new standards of care and improved facility operations. Willowbrook closed its doors in 1987, but the impact of Rivera's expose was far-reaching. Public outreach over conditions at Willowbrook and similar state-run institutions spurred the enactment of federal legislation, including the Protection of and Advocacy System in the Developmental Disabilities Assistance and Bill of Rights Act of 75, the Education for All Handicapped Children Act of 75, and the Civil Rights of Institutionalized Persons Act of 1980. These laws helped lay the foundation for the later passage of the American with Disabilities Act of 1990, a U.S. civil rights law prohibiting discrimination against people with disabilities. Wow. And that story sparked the whole thing. Barbra Streisand hits #1 with her title track song, The Way We Were. Yes. In 1974, she became #1 with that hit. And that's the way it looks right now. Well, let's go to 1974. A sweet, soft ballad by a 31-year-old Barbra Streisand knocks Beatle Ringo Starr down a notch on the Billboard Hot 100. Streisand's The Way We Were overtakes the jaunty You're 16 as the #1 song. Streisand's first, and it would spend 24 weeks total on the Hot 100 chart, 3 in the top slot. Released on September 27th of 73, her The Way We Were served as the love theme for the film of the same name, and opposites attract romantic drama directed by Sidney Pollack and starring Streisand and Robert Redford. The song, co-written by composer Marvin Hamlisch with lyricist Alan and Marilyn Bergman, earned a 1973 Golden Globe for Best Original Song, a 1974 Oscar for Best Original Song, and a 1975 Grammy for Song of the Year. It went platinum in 1997. Legendary LA session musician Carol Kay, who played bass on the recording, remembers that the richly orchestrated song famously required 33 takes. According to Hamlish, the song was omitted from the original cut of the film, but after a lackluster screen test, he says he lobbied the studio hard to let him rescore the final scene with it. Audiences wept and the song stayed in. The melancholy, wistful tune paired with lyrics like memories, light of the corner of my mind, misty watercolor memories of the way we were is sometimes played at funerals. Scores of other artists from Bing Crosby to Gladys Knight have covered it, and Streisand, whose first wide release single, Happy Days Are Here Again, came about 11 years earlier in 1962, and has enjoyed a singing career for more than 6 decades. After The Way We Were, her fame rose, and she had her second number one hit in 1976 with Evergreen, Love Theme from A Star Is Born. But as of January 2024, she has scored 5 number one hits. In 2023, the Chanteuse released the 22-song album Evergreens, celebrating 6 decades on Columbia's Records. Streisand's memoir, My Name is Barbara, came out the same year. Wow. And if you're a big fan of Barbra Streisand, you know where that was going. To 1979, the bassist Sid Vicious dies of a drug overdose in New York City. Yeah, and I'm wondering if that was coming from Psycho Sid. We all thought that was the, we all thought that was where it was going, but it's not. He is the bassist from the notorious band The Sex Pistols. And on this date in 1979, well, he was the former bassist and the living embodiment of everything punk rock stood for and against. He dies of a heroin overdose in a Greenwich Village apartment. His death likely came as a surprise to very few. To the New York City Police Department and the medical examiner's office, he was John Simon Ritchie, a 22-year-old Englishman, under indictment for murder, but now dead of a heroin overdose in a Greenwich Village apartment. But to most, Sid Vicious was an iconic punk rocker, the last member to join the Sex Pistols, taking over for fired bassist Glenn Matlock in early 1977. And what he famously did not bring to the table was music ability. Vicious faked his way through early gigs with the band, reportedly with his amplifier occasionally unplugged on stage by his own bandmates. What he didn't have to fake was the attitude. Sid Vicious was the perfect living embodiment of the punk aesthetic. A street kid who really did walk around London with a SWAT sticker on his chest, a padlock chain around his neck, and a gigantic chip on his shoulder. As his good friend, the critic and author Alan Jones put it, Sid on image alone is what all punk rests on. 7 months into his tenure as a Sex Pistol, Sid Vicious was introduced to a troubled American girl in the London punk scene named Nancy Spungen. Almost immediately, they began a relationship that led to both of their deaths, and by all reports, they were very much in love. But they shared heroin addiction, and that led to repeated instances of violence between them. Sid's addiction may have hastened the dissolution of the Sex Pistols midway through their first U.S. tour in January of '78, and it certainly contributed to the still mysterious events surrounding Nancy's death by stabbing on October 12th of that same year in the Chelsea hotel room she shared with Vicious in New York City. While freed on bail after his arrest from the Spungen murder, Sid landed himself back in jail in December of '78 for assaulting Patti Smith's brother in a bar with a broken bottle. After 7 weeks of detention and detox in the Rikers Island jail, Vicious made bail again on February 1st of '79. Later that same night at a party, he would put heroin into a system that the New York City medical examiner would later estimate to have been 80% pure. Vicious died in the early morning hours of this date in '79. Ooh, what a way to go. I guess when you have it too good, you're going to do crazy things. And the Abscam operation is revealed in 1980. And this will bring us to our third commercial. When we get there, let's take a look at this article. Hope you're enjoying the show as the ab scam article goes next. Where are we going here? Come on. Here we are. Okay. Now, we go to 1980 with this one. Details of AppScam, an FBI operation to uncover political corruption in the government, are released to the public. 31 public officials were targeted for investigation, including Representative John Murphy of New York, 5 other representatives, and Harrison Williams, a senator from New Jersey. Now, in the operation, FBI agents, posed as representatives of Abdul Enterprises, Ltd., which is a fictional business owned by an Arab sheik. Under FBI video surveillance, the agents met with the officials and offered them money or other considerations in exchange for special favors, such as the approval of government contracts for companies in which the sheik had invested. Senator Williams and Representatives Murphy, Michael J. Myers, Richard Kelly, and John W. Jonrett Jr. were ultimately convicted of bribery and corruption. All but Richard Kelly, who had his conviction overturned in 1982 on the basis that the FBI had unlawfully entrapped him, left Congress, and John Murphy, whose term ended in 1981, was saved the fate of expulsion suffered by Williams and Myers. John Jarrett resigned in 1980. Whoa. And that takes us to our final break, which is coming up right now. And we'll be back with 2 more great stories, including 1999 and 2014. We'll be back with more From the Stretch right after these very important messages.
Aren't you glad you used Dial? Dial picks you up and takes you to where it's cool and where it's springtime. Then Dial lingers on to bring you home again, still refreshed, feeling fine. Aren't you glad you used Dial?
Don't you wish everybody did?
Store number 10, 57th Street and 3rd Avenue, Manhattan.
Starfire, born of steel, the new Starfire from Oldsmobile.
Starfire, the sporty little 4-seater you didn't expect from Olds. Starfire, new Super Coupe born with road sense. V6 for economy and performance, a standard 4-speed shift. Starfire.
It's a good feeling to have an Olds around you.
There must be juice in here. It says so on the can. But every time we try it, we can't taste it, man. Can't taste the juice. Can't taste the juice.
If you've been let down by soft drinks with juice, may we suggest Orangina, the soft drink with so much juice you've got to shake it. And it's lightly carbonated, so all that orange and tangerine juice taste comes pouring through. Orangina, the soft drink with juice you can taste.
Us mommies have so much to do.
GE introduces a most sophisticated way to make dishwashing easy. The GE 2500 dishwasher. It provides the ease of advanced electronic controls, computer memory, and a unique energy monitor. Matched with GE's pot scrubber cleaning power. GE, dishwashing made easy.
See how hard I work for you?
GE, we bring good things to life.
Kari Rigg is a real Geico customer, not a paid celebrity. So to help tell her story, we hired Peter Frampton.
My car was totally smashed in an accident.
Not a great way to start the morning.
And the tow truck that the police called damaged it even more.
I wanted to pull my hair out.
Geico handled everything quick and easy. It felt great.
Do you feel like I do?
Geico. Real service, real savings.
Ready to wrap up this first episode of From the Stretch. Hope you're enjoying the articles of the past. We bring them to you every other day here during the week. Our next episode will be on Wednesday, February 4th, which is this coming Wednesday. So stay tuned for episode number 2, where we'll look at some fantastic articles pertaining to February 4th. What years? Well, you'll just have to stay tuned and find out. But we leave you with these final 2 articles of February 2nd, including the man who was charged in California's cyber-stalking case from 1999. Well, weeks after California passed a law against cyber-stalking, Gary Della Penta is charged with using the internet to solicit the rape of a woman who had rejected his advances. He pleads not guilty. Della Penta terrorized a North Hollywood woman by placing ads in her name that claimed she had rape fantasies and provided her address and instructions for disarming her security system. At least 6 men saw the internet ads and came to the woman's home. Many more called with obscene messages. But on January 1st of 1999, California had become the first state to ban cyberstalking, or stalking that involves electronic communications. Della Penta went afoul of the new law by using the internet to get back at the woman who had repeatedly rejected his romantic interest in her. At first, the woman had no idea why men were banging on her door in the middle of the night saying that they were there to rape her. And when she finally learned about the internet ads, she placed notes on her door explaining that the ads were false. However, Della Penta then placed new ads saying that the notes were part of the fantasy. He was caught when the victim's father pretended to respond to the ads and traced their origin. In April, Della Penta pleaded guilty to 1 count of stalking and 3 counts of solicitation of sexual assault and received a 6-year prison sentence. Oh, that's all he gets? Wow, what a cheapskate. All that for nothing. And finally, actor Philip Seymour Hoffman. He dies of a drug overdose at the age of 46, some 12 years ago. Let's take a look at how he died right now. Pulling up this final article. Let's see. Okay, we don't have it there. Meep. Here we go. All right. Well, Philip Seymour Hoffman, he's considered one of the most talented and versatile actors of his generation. He dies of a drug overdose at age 46 in New York City. But during his career, the prolific performer appeared in more than 50 movies, including Capote, Doubt, and the Hunger Games series, and earned a reputation for playing difficult or quirky characters. Hoffman also was an accomplished stage actor and director. He won an Academy Award in the Best Actor category for his portrayal of author Truman Capote in Capote of 2005, and received Oscar nominations for Best Supporting Actor for his role as a CIA agent in Charlie Wilson's War in 2007, and for his performance as a priest in Doubt in 2008. Other film credits include Mission Impossible 3 in 2006, Moneyball in 2011, and the Hunger Games series. He garnered a 3rd Best Supporting Actor Oscar nomination for his role as a cult leader in The Master in 2012. And he was also an acclaimed stage actor and director who helped co-found a theater company, Labyrinth, with LAB in capital letters, and earned Tony Award nominations for his performances in True West, Long Day's Journey into Night, and Death of a Salesman, in which he starred as Willie Loman. February 2nd of this date in 2014, Hoffman, who had struggled with drug addiction in his early 20s, but was sober for many years before relapsing in 2012, he was found dead in his Manhattan apartment. The medical examiner later ruled that the father of 3 had died from acute mixed drug intoxication. And there you have it, friends, the articles that pertain to February 2nd, all the way back to 1848, and end off with 2014. What a timeline, folks. And what a show. What a great first show. We hope you enjoy it. Please, when you see the articles, when we read them off to you, just remember that we read them off. You can, of course, find these articles at history.com. This Day in History, February 2nd. All the articles are there. We read them for you verbatim. They're there with also fact checking as well. So if you need to look at additional facts, you can scroll past the article and look at the additional information that's there below. All the credit goes to the articles. We here at From the Stretch commentate them to you. We'll be back on February 4th on Wednesday with a look at another slew of timeline articles from the Stretch. I'm Jason DeCanio. Have a great night. See you on Wednesday. Bye for now.